All right, you guys, let's see. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Real Talk Recovery, where we talk about recovery from addiction and I share my life with you. Tonight, we're supposed to have a special guest on. Her name is Tarah, but I'm just waiting to see if she's going to be able to sign on with us because we were having a little bit of technical difficulties over there on TikTok. So if you guys don't mind, come on in, come hang out with us, and we are going to wait and see if Tarah comes. And if she does, we're going to rock it. So if she doesn't, that's okay too. We'll still rock it. You know me. We'll figure out something to talk about to fill up that time. So that way, you guys didn't come for nothing. Hey, DB. Hey, Heather. Hey, Jana. Hey, Lisa. Hey, everybody. I really hope that she can sign on. I guess it might be kind of hard because she's all the way in Canada. Okay, let's see. I think that might be her, you guys. Guests. Hey! Oh, there she is. Oh, hold on. Let me go back. Yes. Boom. Boom. All right. Hello. Can you hear me? You hear me now? I can't hear you. Do you have your mic muted? Oh. She'll be back. She's probably getting tired of me, you guys. Hey, y'all. Hey, Bobby. Hey, Axel. Hey, Debbie. What's up, y'all? Hey, Nikita. Thank you guys for being here. I really appreciate it. Hey, Victoria. Hey, Murk. We're trying to work out these kinks.
Sorry, we seem to have a lot of them right now.
I hear you. Great. This is beautiful. Perfect. Okay, you guys, this is Tarah. She's going to share her story with us. Her mom was an addict, and I'm going to let you take it from here, girl. Have at it.
Yeah. So I didn't know that my mom was an addict for quite a while. I was put in foster homes at 5, and I was shuffled around in and out of living with my mom, living in women's shelters because my mom's boyfriends were often abusive. And at one point, I even lived in an orphanage. And the reason I believe, we were put in and out of her home was because she was trying to get clean, and she would relapse or she would have some domestic violence issues. And then, we would get put back into foster care. Somebody would call social services on her. And so that kind of just happened until I was 10 years old. At 10 years old, I think my mom got a court order or something like that to have to sign us over officially to the government. And I continued to live in foster homes until I was 15. During that period, I didn't have a ton of contact from my mom. Pretty much after she signed us over to the government, she just kind of disappeared. And she used to do that in general, even, well, maybe not so much before I was 10. Like, she would just disappear in general, like going off and kind of partying at, going to the bars or something. And she would actually disappear for days, which is, obviously a reason why social services would get involved, because there was no food in the house, 10 years old, having to look after yourself. I do have siblings, but I don't talk about them much just for their own privacy. Yeah. But I did have to take care of my younger brother. And our living circumstances were not good. And, we were abused by her boyfriends. And then at 12 years old, I got the option to make my own choices. That's kind of like the legal. I don't know how it is in the States, but in Canada, once you're 12, you get to make your own choices for yourself.
12?
Yeah.
Holy cow.
Yeah. somebody had brought that up and they were like, I don't know, 12-year-olds, like that's such a big choice to make. And I never even thought about that.
Yeah, that's totally, we don't do that over here. You have to go and have yourself, I think it's called like emancipated from your family. So that way you can make your own choices. Like you're not able to do that until you're like 18.
Wow. Yeah. No. So 12 years old, I was living in a foster home that was mentally abusive to me. And I realized that because I just, was always crying they were constantly putting me down. So they actually wanted to adopt me and I said no. So then they turned really nasty on me. And thankfully my friends' parents let me move in for a little while. And in that process, I had told my social worker I wanted to go for adoption because I didn't want to live in another foster home. And so I went on a TV station to get adopted, and a couple homes came forward wanting to adopt me. So I went into a temporary adoption situation. And at that point, I spent like 3 years where I didn't want to talk to any of my birth family besides my brothers, because I was just really messed up and I was just having a hard time with puberty and just life in general. And I just was like, I want a new start. I think that was kind of like where the whole adoption thing came from.
Yeah.
And so I reconnected with my mom probably a couple years after that. So now I'm probably like, I guess I was actually like 14. And, she was continuously using and not getting better. And I didn't really know much about what was going on in her life. And then at 15, I got the option to go model. So I left Canada and I canceled the adoption. And then I got, through suicide, I was not able to vocalize how I didn't want them to be my parents because I felt like I was abandoning my birth family and by changing my name and just kind of giving up on them. And I was very much like very loyal to my mom, even though I was struggling all the time with just understanding her reality.
Why do you think at a young age you had that loyalty to her? Like, what do you think? I guess maybe because like you knew that was your mom, but I mean, I don't, how could you have that loyalty to her at such a young age and her you not being around her so much? Like, why do you think that was?
I think because she was so lovable in general. Like I always said to my brothers, like, I think the reason why we're not as messed up as we could be, considering all of the stuff that we went through, was just because she loved us and we always knew that we were loved. And like, no matter what, that's what was in my heart. So, and I had quite a few like amazing memories with her. So I knew who she was outside of her addiction before it got really, really bad. So I even say that today, like when I was going back and mending my relationship with her, I held on to those old memories because the person I saw in front of me a lot of the time with her really in her heavy addiction stages, I would never even see her, anymore. So I'd have to hold on to that. Otherwise, I don't know. I just probably would just not want her in my life. So, yeah, so at like 15, we reconnected, and then I went off to model. And yeah, I was always really, like, I just loved my mom. I always wrote to her. I sent her postcards. Like, I really wanted her in my life. And I knew that there was something really special about our connection in general, that there was something that was like, maybe within me that I could see past her addiction and I could see her as an individual. And so at like about that age, about 15, I was like, I want to do something with my life in this area. I want to write a book, or I want to just share my story somehow, because this love between my mom and I is, I believe, really rare. And I also,
I believe it is too, because I see so many families who have their kids or their parents that are addicted. And I just feel like the way that you responded to your mom's struggle was just so, like, you have so much empathy for her situation. And what I see a lot of times is people, they take the addiction as if it's personally personally being done to them. Like when my husband was struggling with his relapse, I was like, he doesn't love me. He's getting high because he doesn't care about our family. And I was like internalizing it all as a personal thing. And instead of looking at it from the point of he's sick, it has nothing to do with him not loving me. And so it sounds like to me, you already had that in your mind, that she's sick, she loves me, I know she loves me, and you could see past that. I wish I had that kind of capability. It took me learning that it was more of him being sick and not about me, and I had to like shift into that. Otherwise I was obsessed with thinking that it was because of me, you know.
Mm-hmm. Well, I did really suffer the consequences of that belief, because I held on to the belief it was me for a very long time. Even though I was able to have love and want a relationship with her, I didn't not turn it on myself. Like, I still believed that she was choosing these drugs over me. I still believed that I wasn't worthy enough for her, or that she didn't love me enough. And even until maybe like 5 years ago, and still to today, it's still unraveling that belief system. And, you know, it took me a really long time of understanding how troubled she was to understand that she was struggling, and that it wasn't about me. But, you know, the damage, when it's done, it's very hard to like let that belief system down, or let it go, because you're not even aware that it's still running, you know. So it's like the way that you feel about yourself is actually like, you know, in your subconscious a lot of the time. And so it's like acting out in your life. So, you know, there was like parallel things going on. And what I always try to say is like, there's one thing that's my relationship with my mom, and there's another thing that's my relationship with myself. And those two things have to be separated, because they're not together, you know, like we live with ourselves every day. So anyway, so I think like 18, I saw a documentary, and it was on drug addiction in England. I was living there at the time, and it was so hardcore, like it showed everything. And I had this understanding that was the way that I had to start telling my story. And I didn't know how to film anything, but, you know, I loved movies. So I took some crash courses on just like how to operate a camera. And, you know, I contacted my mom, and I was just like, you know, I really want to make this documentary for kids that were in a similar situation as me, so that they could try to understand their parents, or try to, you know, learn how to get through this. So she actually wouldn't let me film her for quite a long time. And so I just started shooting my life instead, you know, just to kind of get used to using the camera. And then I got a big modeling job, and it just happened to be at the same time that my mom called me and was saying, you know, I've hit rock bottom, and like, I'm not going to be around much longer. Like, my health is really bad, and I think you need to come home. And I was like, okay, can I film you? Because I always knew that, like, in my soul, I had a purpose, and I wanted to share our story, and it was really important to me. And my mom, you know, finally agreed to doing it. And so when I got there, I was just not expecting to find her in her condition. And that was when I really got to see what addiction was like. And that was very hard, because...
What happened? How was she? What was going on?
Well, the first day that I went to go see her, she couldn't even meet me because the drugs that she's taking. So she wasn't only addicted to heroin, she was also doing crack at that point, morphine, like everything she pretty much get her hands on. She had pretty much just given up on life. And she was very, very depressed and very disconnected from everyone. And so when I went to go see her, something in the drugs that she was taking from the streets had blinded her. So she actually couldn't see. And so her roommate ended up going out and meeting me and bringing me into the house. And when I saw her, you know, she's all huddled over in the bed and covering her eyes, not able to even see me. So, you know, and also weighing like probably like 80 pounds less than the time when I saw her before, which is huge. So she was just withering away. She couldn't see. And I was just like devastated, you know, like I'd seen her through her stages of addiction, but just like somehow it seemed like she wasn't that bad. Like she was struggling, but not that bad. And so, of course, as a kid and as a person that just wants to take care of somebody else that's struggling, I was like, okay, well, we'll get you out of here. And I really went on a mission to just, try to figure her out really quick. And I was like, I'm going to shoot this footage in 1 week, make this documentary, get her out of there. Like, had very big hopes. But I didn't really understand.
Hold on just a second. Do you hear that? Like, do I sound like a robot on your side?
No.
I'm literally going to kill this thing. It's like, I don't know if it's me or let me see if I
Do I sound like a robot?
Yes. It just, you were sounding perfect. And then it shifted into this like robot cracky sound. Like it's cracky and I don't know what it is. I don't know, but
I have a fan next to me and I was wondering if that was it, but
it's back to normal now.
Okay. Maybe my mom's coming to say hi.
Yes.
She's giving us interference.
Yes.
Just to let us know she's here. So I started, documenting this and thinking I would get her clean and help her and everything. And then I just, she was making all these promises to me that she wasn't upkeeping, she wasn't trying to get off the drugs while I was there. She was just taking as much and she was nodding out on me and I wasn't able to have a conversation. And, there was just something in me that was always like, it's not my life. It's not for me to fix her, to save her. Like, as much as I want to, I can't. Like, I realized that I just had to accept her life as it was. And I still went on for like quite a few years after that, still thinking that she would get clean, that she would get, better. And I could start to see, like, we'd have these interactions with each other and she would just leave after like 20 minutes. She'd be like, I have to go somewhere. And I have already, flown back to Canada. I've been busing for like an hour and a half to get to where she lives because she lives in places that I can't stay, usually government funded buildings and, very poor conditions with bed bugs and everything. And then she would leave after 20 minutes and I would be like, I can't do that. That's the 3 hours of, busing all the time just to get 20 minutes of time with you. And so I started to figure out that like, she must be using, and that's why she's having to go. And in my place of trying to accept her addiction, I had to come to a place where I had to address that. And so I just openly asked her and I was like, if you need to use your stuff, like, I know you do it. I can't stop you from doing it. Like, just go off and we'll try this out and we'll see how you are when you come back. And like, if I feel uncomfortable, then I'll just leave. And so it ended up being that she would do that and come back and she could still hold up a conversation. It wasn't that bad. But what I noticed is that she stopped using as much. As soon as the judgment from me started to diminish and she felt safer and more comfortable, she didn't want to use as much. Like, she actually wanted to be more coherent and more present with me, which is, I think, amazing. And there is a TED Talk on just like how it's kind of harm reduction. Like, my whole TikTok and like what I kind of advocate for is that not everybody gets clean. Right. And how can you build a relationship with somebody that's in active addiction? Like, of course, as a family member, you want that person to get clean. You want them to choose recovery. But if they don't, do you just push them out of your life? Because that's what, a lot of people are told to do for them to hit rock bottom. But every time that I tried to do that with my mom, her addiction got worse, or she just disconnected from me, because she was struggling with her addiction. So then she got clean for a little while, and I really thought that this was going to be it. And, I started to ask all these kind of personal questions that I wanted to know, like, what did it feel like when we were taken away the first time? Or like, I wanted some answers as to what it was like for her on her side. And right. She just couldn't answer them. They were too painful. But in her reaction, I got to see the truth, because she couldn't talk about it because it was too painful for her, which says, like, that's what the pain she was holding on inside of herself, all that shame and guilt and struggle, on top of learning about all of the trauma in her life and all the things that had happened to her. I just came to a place where I couldn't be angry at her anymore. But I also feel like, that's a dangerous place to be, because you can push your own needs aside and I did develop codependency, which I didn't even learn about until like much later in our relationship. And I would sacrifice my life constantly to rush back to take care of her. Every time she called wolf or she told me she was going to die or anything that would happen, I would, automatically start running back to her and put my life on hold. And that was a very unhealthy way of dealing with it. But I didn't have anyone to really talk to about it. I think that we're so lucky right now because finally we're starting to talk about addiction.
Right.
Finally we're up and we're saying, and like so many of us share these similar stories, and like how amazing is it to learn about these different behavioral things that come out of it, from the viewpoint of a family member to the viewpoint of a person with the addiction. Like there's so many shared experiences that we don't have to be so much in the dark anymore.
Right. I love it. I'm so grateful. Like when I found your TikTok and I saw that you were sharing the film with your mom, it was like, this is amazing. And I can tell you this, I lost custody of my son for a year, and I'll tell you that it was the worst experience of my whole entire life. Every time I closed my eyes, I would see my son. So I'm sure your mom felt the same way. I'm sure of it. I'm sure every night that she went to bed, she thought about you and your brothers. I know it because that's how I was. I was so angry at myself for losing my son. And so I still have guilt and shame. And I got my kid back. He's upstairs playing Nintendo. So I can just imagine how hard it was for her. Like it's hard. It's very, very hard. And it's like, and then if you don't, with not being able to get you guys back, then there's the what ifs. If I could have done this if I could have done this better, if I had done that. And so it's just like you constantly rehash it. And so I know she was probably just really hurting inside,
Yeah. And I got to see that. Like she really let me in. Like I really got to see her pain and her struggle. And I think I talk also about like how, these bad things that come out of this trauma, we become hyper vigilant as the kids of parents with addictions, because we're constantly on alert and we're constantly in this fight or flight reality where we're just not sure, like, is my mom alive? Is she dead? And you're constantly in that stressed out state. But it also can allow you to be more sensitive to your surroundings, and you become more aware to people's emotional states, and you can kind of understand them deeper. And so I really am blessed for the fact that I was able to see like my mom's pain and really see it, because it allowed me to connect to her. And I always tell people that are going through recovery, like, if you can really connect to your kids, like really let them in, like there's so much potential for healing. And it's so hard, I think, for somebody that has lost their kids to be able to hear of all the horrible things that maybe they did during their active addiction. But those kids really need to be able to vent it out, and they need to have a safe space where they can be heard.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah. I feel very blessed that my mom allowed me to be so open with her. And in the parts that she just couldn't, like, when I talked to her about us being taken away, or I talked about when she would just disappear on me and how hard that was, like, she also broke down and couldn't talk to me. Like, so it was just like understanding where the real difficulty was within her, of what she could actually deal with and couldn't deal with. And understanding that she just couldn't deal with much made me understand why she kept running back to these drugs.
Yeah.
And, I didn't even know that addiction was a disease till after my mom passed away. So I was just constantly watching her, trying to figure it out. I was like, what is it? What keeps motivating her? And every time I saw that there was something difficult in her life, she would want to use. And so I kept trying to find different ways to, like, I even joked that we should have like a TV show on me or something, because I used to bring her crystals and I'd bring her all these like healing things. And I'd be like, Mom, what if you just try this? What if you do that? And what if you think this way? Or what if you do, and like some of it helped, but I wish that I would have known that it was a disease, and to be able to research that more and to understand what was going on and how it was affecting her choices, because it would have taken out a lot of my work, trying to figure out what was going on. And it would have made me not feel like so much that she was just selfish because that's how it looks from the outside.
It's like, and I hear that so much from people because they believe that when I was in active addiction, I wasn't like coherently making the choice to choose drugs over my son. You know what I'm saying? Like, it wasn't even like, it was like it's like autopilot. It's like a plane's flying and the pilot has to go pee, so they press the autopilot button. It's like everything that I did in my addiction was like muscle memory. Like, I had been doing it for so long, it was second nature. And anytime I would have struggles like your mom, or depressed or sad, or go through like a life-changing event, like, I would go and reach for drugs to cope with that feeling. Did your mom ever share with you, like, what, if anything bad happened to her, if she had a hard time when she was growing up with her, did her parents abuse her? Like, did anything like that happen that maybe kind of catapulted her into her addiction?
Yeah, so she opened up about a lot. She was sexually and physically abused a lot, not by her parents, but she was adopted, and that also played into her, feeling of selfless, non-worthy. I posted a video just the other day about how she had this void in her, and she never felt like she had a home, and she was so desperate to make a family. And I think that's why she became a young mom with, I think, by the time she was 25, she had 4 kids. So, and that goes into play too. And it's another thing that I always try to tell people is, like, our parents are not gods and saints, like, they're human beings. And if I try to put myself in a position of being 25 with like 5 kids or 4 kids to have to take care of, plus being single, plus trying to figure out my life in general, or how to make money, or all those things, I mean, that's so much pressure and it's so difficult. And then you add an addiction on top of that, and like, then it's even harder because, and so I think that it was really, I had to start just looking at her as a person and stop trying to make her as this parent I wanted her to be, because that's just who she wasn't.
Right.
She had the potential for all these things, but she wasn't able to be that. And I had to just love who she was. And I think because she was such a special person, and like most people, when they got to know her, she always spent extra time trying to listen to you, to know your life, to really get engaged in people's stories. She knew everyone in her neighborhood. She was very kind. She was just a really kind person. And I think that is kind of why I feel like the footage with my mom, it almost humanizes an addict, because I feel like once somebody becomes an addict, they get stripped of being human. And it's almost gone and been put in jail or something. And like, now all of a sudden they're, labeled as having all this other stuff that they don't even have. Like, it doesn't mean that they're going to go and take advantage of other people all the time. Like, it doesn't. Yeah. So, yeah, I feel like my mom was just, a really good person, just struggling with addiction.
I love watching her just from the clips that you have on your TikTok. Like, I think that she's amazing. And I also think that it shows people, like, it's like having a window into the soul and seeing like all the heartache and the pain, and like the rough times that we don't talk about or show, you know what I mean? And I was talking about, like, getting away from calling myself an addict, calling myself a person in recovery instead of an addict. And because I feel like that word just holds me back. Just saying I'm an addict all the time. I've gotten to the point where I'm like, I don't want to just be an addict. I'm not just an addict. I'm more than an addict. My addiction doesn't define me anymore. Like, I'm in recovery. I'm a person in recovery. And God, you had thought I was like changing the Bible or something with how people respond on TikTok just from something like that. Like, I feel like, we're more than just addicts. I have feelings, I have emotions, I'm good at things, I'm a mom. And your mom was a person. She was a mom. She was an amazing person that was able to show her life on film for other people. Like that, whenever that film comes out, if it's not out, is it?
Not yet. No.
Yeah. Whenever that film comes out, that is going to be amazing, because it's going to help so many people that don't understand, that can't see it. When you put those videos on your account, do you get a lot of good feedback, or are people like messed up and mean?
I think in general, I get a lot of good feedback. But it's interesting when I get negative feedback, because the negative feedback's to me, not really to my mom. And I think, as much as I think, yes, we should have more awareness and how to help people with addictions, we stop thinking about the kids.
Yeah.
And kids become adults, and then adults can, become adults with addictions. And there's an opportunity right now to like stop the cycle. And when I get that negative stuff at first, it was really hard for me, because obviously I'm battling with showing my mom in a negative light, but it was part of our life and it's part of addiction. But what happened was, just so much backlash for like, why would you show that? And not even in consideration to, wow, that must have been really hard to be in that situation. And like, I get it. We want to protect people's image and we don't want to put them, in a bad light, but we have to think about the whole picture. We have to think about everyone involved, even that you don't get to see, and all those things that are happening to those people around them. And I just think the kids really need the most amount of attention right now to make sure that they are getting their needs met, that, that there's more awareness and opportunity for them to understand how to deal with their feelings.
People are afraid of the truth. It makes them feel uncomfortable. They're not ready to take it. I'm telling you right now, I see it all the time, even when I'm sharing stuff. It's most likely people that either have someone they love that is struggling with addiction, or they are themselves are struggling with addiction, and they want us to hide that away and not speak about it and swipe it underneath the rug. And it's like, how is that going to help anybody if we're keeping it a secret and not talking about it? What do you think? How do you think we could help children of addicts? What do you think could be done to, I don't know, connect with kids and help them learn that it's not their fault, and that, and to also help them so they don't make the same mistakes their parents did?
Well, one thing, and it was interesting that you brought this up when you said, to not label yourself as just an addict, right? So the kids are learning from their parents too. They're learning if you're not forgiving yourself, like, then there's something wrong, right? There's something wrong with the way that you view yourself and the way that you view addiction. And there's the kid is going to latch onto that and try to save you, and there's like this empowerment it needs to come. There's an empowerment for the kids and for their parent, where they're like, we're survivors, we're victorious, we got through this, look how strong we are, look at our attributes. Like, when you're a kid dealing with all this stuff, you get taught about it, yes, but like, you don't get empowered. You don't get told, wow, you just went through something so difficult, and to build them up, to make them feel like that wasn't a burden, that wasn't something super negative, that was an experience that they were able to overcome and what they learned from it, and to like really just build them up. Because most kids are going to hear from society that they're just going to turn out like their parents. Yeah. And so when life gets difficult, and what I was going to say earlier is like, I used to say to my mom all the time, she would have these emotions come up and she'd go, oh, it's because I'm an addict. And I would stop her and I would say, no, actually, Mom, I have the same things happen, and it's because you're human. Like, the way that you aren't able to deal with your emotions, most people are not able to deal with their emotions. Like, we don't get a handbook, and we don't get taught in school usually, like, in a really good way to know how to deal with our emotions. And so we're constantly just kind of learning off of experiences and trying to figure things out. And so like the kids, when they start dealing with difficult things in their lives, they start to automatically think, well, this is because I'm going to be an addict. My parents are addicts, so I'm going to turn out like them. And then they just give up, and they take this not easier road, because it's obviously not easier, but it's something that's like, well, if I'm not going to be able to beat this, like, why should I try? Right. And at least that's what I see. And I don't, I can't speak for everything and everyone, but I think that, when you're constantly beat down by life, which happens to a lot of people, regardless if there's addiction in your life or not, you're looking for ways to just deal with your life. And if we can find ways to teach them how to be like self-reliant, how to build themselves up, how to hold themselves when they're going through difficult situations, how to articulate their feelings, like to just give them skills and to make them understand that they're human, to separate themselves from thinking that they're going to become an addict, because that is going to pigeonhole them into that they're always going to be so scared that whatever choices they make, they're going to turn out that way. And, you know, it is, you know, in your genetics, but it doesn't necessarily mean that every person is going to become an addict. Like, I'm 40, I've never been an addict. I have dabbled with things, like, you know, but I had a really good support system. I had a second mom come into my life when I was 12 years old, and I was taught how to be self-reliant and how to, you know, be strong within myself.
Instead of being a victim of your circumstances, you know, you learned how to conquer the situation and live through it. Dr. B says the same thing whenever we talk about like addicts or kids, you know, growing up. That's one of the first things that he always says, is that we need to empower them. And my son is 7. He's going to turn 7 July 4th. And I'm trying to learn how to empower him, because I can already see in him, I can already see things, you know what I mean? Like, he struggles with his emotions, regulating his emotions. He is very like insecure about himself, unsure, and he's so great at everything, but he like doesn't want to do it because he's afraid that he's not going to do it perfect, or other people are going to make fun of him. And so I'm already like kind of getting concerned, because I don't want him to not feel proud and like he, you know, like he can do anything. And so me as an addict in recovery, my mind goes into overdrive, because I'm like, is that because of me? Is he struggling with this because I wasn't there for a year and he has these abandonment issues, you know? And everything I pull it back to, it's because of me and my addiction, you know? And so it's really, it's so hard for me. It's like I'm in an overdrive parenting, because I want to make sure that I don't mess my son up, you know?
If I could say anything, I would have to say that, you know, I don't think that any parent, I'm not a parent, but I don't think any parent doesn't feel like they're not messing their kids up, whether or not they were an addict or not. Like, I think
it's so hard.
Fear, you know, like that you're not passing on bad traits, or you're not, did I not give them enough attention? You know, like, it's just a parent type of worry, I feel, at least.
So,
like,
I think so too.
Maybe if you can start seeing it that way, you can be the leader of that. Like, it's you're just doing so well, like, with your recovery. Like,
it's hard though, because
you have to, like, let it go a little.
Everything comes back to my addiction though, and I have to shift from that too. That's on me though. You know, I'll get better about it. With your mom and you, like, I don't want to make you cry or anything or make you uncomfortable, but when she was sick, was it because of like complications from her using drugs? And then like what happened? Did it happen over like a long period of time, or did it happen quickly? Did she go peacefully? I mean, kind of what happened around that? Was it something to do with, you know, using drugs and it made her sick, or she had emphysema or something like that?
Yeah, so my mom got emphysema 7 years before she passed. And like I was saying, like, her actual use, once we started building a much better relationship, really decreased. And then she got emphysema, and she was so scared of dying. And the doctors told her that she had 7 or 6 months to live. And, you know, for anybody to have to face that reality, you know, it's difficult. So of course, for somebody that their coping mechanism has always been drugs, she ran back to the drugs. She just kept using. And that's when I really saw that, you know, I couldn't steer her away from it. I couldn't just change the subject. As soon as it hit her, she wanted to numb. But she got emphysema for multiple reasons, but one of them, she got it from the talc, I guess, or something in the heroin. So I don't know if that's smoking it or how she got it in her, but it was something that was cut in the heroin, so that damaged her and got her emphysema. She had asthma already, and then she was a smoker. So you know, she always used to deny the smoking part. And I was like, Mom, out of like 80% of the footage I filmed of you, you're smoking cigarettes. Like, I'm sure it contributed. But that was like the relationship that my mom and I developed, was we were very like sarcastic with each other. We, you know, on her deathbed, and I'll get to how she passed away, but we had like this little joke. So like my mom and I made light of everything, and that was so important for our relationship, just dealing with such heavy subjects. And so like she used to correct my English. It was because my grandfather was quite proper, and so like he used to correct our English. So somebody asked me something about my siblings, and I said I'm the oldest, and she said eldest. And this is like moments before she passed. So my mom, because she had the emphysema, she was so scared of getting pneumonia because she was losing her capacity to breathe. She only had 10% oxygen left. She surpassed the 6 months and ended up living for 7 years longer. But, you know, she kept on getting worse and worse within her illness. And she kept using, which I'm sure, you know, physically was not helping her to heal or to deal with her illness, that, you know, you don't recover from emphysema. You know, they don't have a way to reverse it. They have a way to slow it down, but eventually it will catch up with you. And so there was all these ways of, you know, expanding her life with it, but it was very hard to convince her to not eat sugar, to do all these things. And like, she kind of just was very much like, I just want to have a good life or whatever. But anyways, so she ended up getting pneumonia. She got really sick. She couldn't walk anymore. She was already in a wheelchair. She already had like 2 oxygen tanks, and she just gave up. She just, finally in Canada, we had the program for assisted passing, and she just chose to want to go that way. So
What's assisted passing? Where they help you?
Yeah, so it's similar to like when you see in the movies when you get the injection in jail or something and their life is gone. That's what they do. So if you have a terminal illness and you're really sick, you can opt to end your life early. But they have to kind of like look into your whole situation and make sure that, you know, this is your last kind of option. Yeah. And so she was very scared of that, but at the same time, she was just so exhausted and so tired from having to fight like every single day to just breathe. And the hardest part was just, you know, because she was such a heavily addicted person, she constantly had to go get more stuff, and she was always having to hustle and try to get more money to do that. And it was so exhausting with this illness that she could barely move, and just putting on a jacket and trying to get to all the stuff. And yeah, so she ended up doing that. I got the phone call. I went to go see her, again, not knowing if this was just another kind of like cry wolf kind of situation or not, but thankfully one of my closest friends convinced me that if it wasn't, you know, that I would probably regret not being there. So I'm glad that I went. And so yeah, and I smile because it was actually like a really beautiful passing. Like for me, I loved her more than like life itself, it felt, you know. And so I was always like, oh my God, when my mom dies, like it's going to be like nobody's going to understand how much I loved her. And you know, the year before she passed, I thought she was going to go, and it was really hard, and I kind of had to deal with it then because she got so sick, and I thought for sure that was it. And I just realized like this is her life path, this is her, you know, her story. It's not for me to control. I don't get to say when she goes, when she stays. You love the person and you love them to their last breath. And so yeah, so I was with her, and thankfully I got to hold her and be with her as she had the whatever it is that they give you to stop your heart. And so the last words were, she corrected me, and then something happened, and somehow she said oldest, and my last words to her last word was eldest. So I got to correct her back on her improper use of the word, and that was how she left. So, you know, what was ringing through my ears through the whole time and just through like the last couple of years of her life was, we did it. You know, like we overcame all the odds, and we loved fearlessly and ferociously.
Oh gosh, it makes me really emotional. Like every time I see those videos, it makes me emotional. Okay, I want to know, because I know a lot of people will want to ask how you did this or your opinion on it. Like, when your mom was struggling, did you ever feel like you were enabling her? And did you ever enable her? And if you did, how did you get away from doing that?
So I didn't really like I said, I had nobody telling me what was going on. So I was just trying to figure everything out on my own. I didn't even know what enabling was.
Yeah.
You know, my family was supporting her in different ways. The government was supporting her. Like, you could look at the government and say, are you enabling somebody with an addiction? But it got to a point where, you know, my mom was asking me for money all the time. And every time I go visit her, and I didn't have a ton of money. And so I didn't even know what boundaries were. You know, I learned that like near the last year of her life, but I knew that it didn't make me feel comfortable, and I didn't like how I was feeling. And so I just told her, like, I think I actually diverted it, because I'm passive aggressive, like another thing that comes out of being a child of an addict. You're very afraid to express your emotions because usually your parents can't handle them. And so I think I diverted it in some way, and it came back at me in like a really bad way, because she always remembered it. And then I was like, listen, Mom, like, I don't like when you ask me for money all the time. Like, even if I had it, I don't want to give it to you. And like,
Right.
She just kind of got it, like in the way that it didn't feel very good how we figured it out, but she just kind of got it, and she stopped asking. And then, you know, with her illness, she did have moments where she was going to have to go like panhandle in the streets or do something. And I was like, okay, fine, I will give it to you now. But I would always make like an agreement, and I wouldn't give her a lot.
Yeah.
And, you know, and it wasn't often. It was only like in situations where I knew she could potentially have an attack, because that's what happens with the withdrawals, and especially with the emphysema. And yeah, I would just like negotiate something with her. So I would be like, okay, well, I get like 2 hours of you filming with me or something so that I didn't feel like I was just giving. And I also have it on film, and I'll put that as a TikTok soon. But, you know, a moment where she asked me, one of the last times she asked me, and I said, okay, well, we're going to film this, what it feels like from my perspective, and like all that sort of stuff. And that, I think, was the only part that I feel like potentially could have been enabling. But I feel like, because it was so few times, it wasn't like I was supplying her every single day. Like, I didn't feel like it was a big thing, but I have been asked about that. And people look at loving somebody as enabling. And I just think that that is a very messed up way to look at it. Like, everyone deserves love. It doesn't matter who you are or what you do, they deserve love, because somebody that is broken and even does really horrible things, something happened to them in their life that created them into that thing. And, you know, I use this example of like an injured animal on the street that like tries to attack you. And when they've been beaten or abused, and like when you find out the truth of that, like, you have love and compassion for that animal. So how can you not have it for another human being? You know?
Exactly. And I'll tell you this, like, last year my husband relapsed, and he was relapsed for a good 6 months, and I had shared that on TikTok, and all my viewers knew. But recently some people, I guess, redug it up or something and found out, and the people have been basically telling me I should have just abandoned him and left him and kicked him out. And of course, I didn't allow him to stay here with me and my son. I either removed me and my son from the home, or I had him go stay at his mom's house. But like, that's my husband, and I married him because I love him. And if I was struggling and I relapsed, he wouldn't leave me. You know, I wasn't giving him money to go get high. I wasn't making it easier on him, but I was not going to just abandon him. And I can't even understand that thought process of just kicking somebody out on the curb and telling them to go. And then, you know, Dr. B said to me one day, he said, would you kick him out if he had cancer? Would you kick him out if he just had a heart attack and had to go, you know, go to the hospital and get medication for that, and he was sick and couldn't do anything? And I'm like, no. Then why would we kick him out when they're sick and they're struggling with their addiction, you know? And so I don't understand how people can't see how that's not helping anyone, you know? What do you think about tough love?
Well, I can understand how it might motivate some people.
Mm-hmm.
But not everybody's the same. Like, maybe some people, they're just fighters in a different kind of way. You know, I always say that, like, there's an example with my brother and I. Like, one of us is more like, okay, you hurt me, I'm going to hurt you. And the other one's like, you hurt me, I'm going to hurt myself. like there's just different ways that we deal with life in general. And if you're that type of person that's like, I'm not going to fight back, and you're like, I'm just going to hurt myself more, you'll probably, the tough love is probably going to push them to the edge of like suicide, and like I just think that I don't see, maybe if you know that that's going to like really help them, but you can't know for sure.
No.
But I saw that with my mom, that when I tried to push too hard, she would just pull back. And yeah, I say too, I'm like, what's your end goal? Like, do you want a relationship with this person? Because if you do, like, you're going to have to accept who they are. Like, that's
and work through it with them and help them find other options. This is what I think. So if it happened again, like, I would sit down and I would try to help my husband find other options other than getting high that could help him. Because a lot of the reasons why my husband struggled was because of he had a job that was super stressful. He couldn't deal with it. He couldn't assert himself and say no to people. So they ran him ragged at this job. And so if I now that I know that, and I know a lot of what was going on with, like, in his mind with the depression, I would have been like, okay, this is what we need to do. Let's get you into therapy. Let's change your job. Let's quit that job. We don't even need it. You know what I mean? And helped him like transition into something different. But then, when I say things like that, people are like, you can't do that for him. He has to want it to da 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 da. And I'm like, when somebody's struggling with addiction, do you think they want to be struggling with addiction? Do you think they want to be hurting themselves? Like, it's honestly not, like, you're not in your right mind when you're not sane when you're using drugs. I wasn't, at least. I was completely insane. I was shooting methamphetamine, hallucinating, all kinds of horrible shit. And that was not, I am so different now. Like, I was not that person. And so I don't understand. Like, I try to be more open-minded. I used to have a really like brash, like, you have to do the 12 steps. You have to do this. If you don't do that, this is going to happen. And just from sharing my story, it has made me so much more softer and understanding. And I want to meet people where they're at, and that's why I say I'll never turn my back on somebody that's using drugs. I will always be there to support them. So that way they know that they can reach out to me when they're ready to get better, anyway, I have a lot on my mind that I'm thinking about, like, with addiction and my husband struggling, and then kind of comparing it to your mom's situation and stuff like that. And so it's hard. It's really difficult. You've healed so much by sharing your mom's story.
Well, another thing I said is, like, I don't really have regrets, because I heard this one saying once that's like, if you knew better if you knew then what you know now, you may have made a different choice, but you didn't know that then. So how can you be upset with yourself for not knowing what you know now? And like, even with my TikTok, like, I was always like pro, like, be connected to your family, don't give up on them. But then I had to hear some really hard stories of people being abused by people with active addictions and horrible things that would happen to them. And it opened me up to realizing there's so many different ways, and nobody should ever put themselves in a position where they're getting injured to try to give love or support to another person. Like, you can do that from a distance, but you shouldn't have to physically be there and take that and get re-traumatized. And like, there's just so many different ways to doing it, and nobody really knows the answer to anything. And so there's no reason for anyone to judge anybody else. Like, everybody is trying the best that they can in the moment that they're in with what tools they have.
Yeah.
And that is where we have to come at from every angle. Like, even the people that, like, have really maybe done horrible things and maybe completely cut out like all the, ones with addictions and done or said horrible things, like, it came from a place of pain, like misunderstanding. And that just is what we have to focus on, is that our place of pain and hurt is, if it's not bringing more love in this world, then that's what we need to look at. And that's what we need to heal. And like, that's what we should be focusing on, not how other people are dealing with their loved ones with addiction. It's like, how can we heal the pain and hurt from addiction? That is the most important thing.
Amen. Amen, sister. Okay. This is what I want you to do. Could you kind of tell everybody about your TikTok account? Thank you so much for sharing everything about your mom and just being honest and open and not like, I love having people on that just aren't afraid to share. You know what I mean? And so it really means a lot to me that you came on tonight. I'm so glad that we got this to work out, because this is even better. I'll upload this on my YouTube channel. And if you have a YouTube channel, I'll link all your stuff. Tell us about your TikTok, what the name of it is. Tell us when the film is going to come out, and anything else you want to like add. If you want to, share encouraging words with people that are struggling, whatever you want to do, I'm going to let you take it away.
Okay. So my TikTok is called addictions_talks, because addiction itself is talking. I think addiction is here to teach us. And I think that we really just have to open up to what that message is. My film is going through some transitions. I have a production company that wants to produce it, and so I've been holding off on the editing, but I do have another cut. So it's kind of in this strange space that, I've been working on this film for 17 years, and I believe that it has its purpose and its place, and I have to trust the process. So I do ask people if they want to see the film and to be updated to subscribe. There is a link in my bio on my TikTok. Also, you can go to my website called To the Moon and Back documentary.com. And then I'll send you all the links that you can add to this. And another thing that, I really want to do, and if anybody is working in that area, is create programs and retreats for kids that have parents with addictions, because I think there are so many tools out there that we can give them, such as meditation and just self-awareness and self-reliance, and the list goes on. So if anyone wants to hit me up and discuss that further, that's doing something similar, or wants to contribute or create, for the kids.
That would be awesome. Like a summer camp or something?
Yeah, I really want them to travel too, because that was the one thing coming from like a poor family, and like already you are labeled as this foster kid, or you just don't think that your life can be expansive. And if we could get them to like even go on a trip to show them that life can be so beautiful outside of just some of the harsh realities of it, that you've had to grow up with.
I think that's a beautiful idea. That would be so good. That would be amazing to do for kids. What was I going to say? You just brought up the foster care thing. I don't mean to go backwards, but I want to ask you, did you ever have any bad experiences in foster care? Did you ever get stuck with any families that were horrible?
Yeah. I also, I don't talk a ton on my TikTok yet about that, but I do try to advocate for people that are healthy to become foster parents, even if it's just temporary, because the way that the system is right now, and it's not for all foster parents. I know there are some good ones, but I had some pretty horrific experiences of mental abuse and sexual abuse that was not happening, thankfully, to me, but around me. And when the social workers would come and they'd ask you about the home, if you said anything, it would get back to the foster parent and it would come out on you. So you learned really quickly to silence yourself. And so a lot of the stuff that's happening in foster homes is not being talked about or becoming aware of. And so I think, we really need to just come together as a community and think of different ways that we can start helping these kids.
Yeah, the kids need to be protected for sure.
Yeah.
I figured you'd probably had bad experiences because, it's terrible. My son was very fortunate. He went to a good place, but when they took him, they had nowhere for him to go. So they stuck him in like this respite home with like a bunch of other kids. And so I'm so glad that the family he went to was a good family, but I hear so many horror stories with kids that are like getting abused and stuff like that. It pisses me off. It makes me mad because the kids, my son was innocent. You were innocent in the whole thing, So anyway, I really appreciate you for sharing with us.
Is that, kids, when they turn bad, after you've been let down time and time again, and people start labeling you as you're going to start thieving from me, you're going to do all these things that the older kids did, you're going to start just doing it, and we have to have compassion for people that start trying to, get attention from being bad, and that's somebody asking for help.
Yeah, exactly. I truly believe that too. My sister did that. She acted out, and it was because she was struggling with mental illness, and my mom and dad didn't know. And so we finally were able to find out she had bipolar disorder and actually get her the help that she needed. So yeah, that is true. I really appreciate you coming on here. It just means so much to me that you came on and shared. I'm really looking forward to the film when it does come out. Is there ways that people can help? Is there a donation or a GoFundMe or any kind of thing that we can send money to?
Yeah. Currently, no, not for the film, but because I feel like that's working itself out on its own right now. I probably will soon develop some kind of GoFundMe to start these retreats or programs, because I also do a Zoom call. I don't do it a lot, between a recovering parent to talk to the kids of that have addicted parents, because I think that there is a bridge there that they can cross, where they can ask the recovery parent anything that they couldn't ask their own parents. And so there's a potential for healing for both angles. And so that is something that
I could have you talk to, when my little boy gets a little bit older, you could talk to him. You could meet with my son and talk to him about stuff that he could talk to me about. Is that what
Well, I mean, that is an angle, but mine is more like somebody like you. So you've been in recovery, you would talk to somebody else's kids that their parent is still an active addict, and those kids could ask you anything about what your addiction was like, and because they can't ask their own parents because their parents are in active addiction, and a lot of the time they don't want to talk about it. But the kids, they just have so many questions, they don't have anybody to talk to. And if it comes from an adult that's already gone through it, that understands it, that cares about these kids, what I've seen so far is that they have been responding in such a great way. There's been so much healing and opportunity and understanding from that. So I really want that to take off as well. We can have talks a couple times a week with any kid that wants to come in and be part of that group and ask whatever questions that they have.
That's so cool. And is that linked in your bio? Is it your Patreon or something?
No, that's the beginning stages. I've only done 2 so far. And so I'm still testing it out in beta, whatever it's called. So, yeah, I will start releasing that stuff. I just moved back to Canada so that I could get more move forward with all these projects, because it's pretty hard when you're traveling. So yeah.
If there's any way that I can help you promote stuff like that, I'll just send it over to me. Just email it or send it to me on TikTok, and I'll share it on all my social medias. Thank you so much for coming on tonight. I'll let you get off here so that way you can go enjoy the rest of your day. But thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, bye.
Bye, girl. Hey, we did it. Okay, guys. I really hope y'all enjoyed Tarah. She did amazing. She did better than I expected for her to do. I kind of get a little nervous at the beginning, but she is so good. And I'm just so grateful to be able to have somebody else's perspective on addiction, and just to hear how her mom and her relationship, it seems like they really loved each other a lot, and that she was able to heal in that situation and not hold that resentment towards her mom. Her name on TikTok is addiction talks. So I'm going to wrap this up. I'm going to upload this video, and I'm going to go live over on TikTok. So come on.